Rock and roll. All right, well, thank you, Claudia and Chopin, for inviting me. When Chopin and I met several years ago, we decided to get this started, and I think we had the very first meeting, and then I was hired by Qlik, and so I felt like it was really important that this be by developers, for developers, and of course, we love to support it, but I felt like it was just really important that people developing it were supporting that, and they've done a great job running with this. I'm going to give you guys a chance to choose what we see, because it is getting a little bit warm in here. It could just be because of my fantastic bow tie and string. That I'm warm, but I'm guessing it's warm. You guys have had a long day. I've got two options for you. I'm going to show you both options, and you guys can choose. I've got this phenomenally boring PowerPoint presentation I can do for you, or I've got this really, really cool word cloud that I can talk about and how it relates to Qlik Insight Bot. So, show of hands, boring PowerPoint presentation. All right? Fantastic word cloud presentation. Nice. Well, that was really a trick question because I've never done a boring presentation in my life. So y'all should not fall for that. But I do have a great technical presentation for people like Ruer or Skype. So I really want to know the ins and outs of this. Let me show you right after we get done. I'm in no rush to get home, but I felt like the rest of you, I did not drive all the way down here so I could see a marketing presentation and sales show. So this is a word cloud. Have y'all seen a visualization of a word cloud before? I mentioned? This is my very first fictional short story right there. All the words are there. The larger the word, the more times it was used in the story. The reason I'm bringing this up is many of you are interested in self-service. If you're interested in self-service, raise your hands. All right, good. Create the story. All the words are right there. I'm getting some crazy looks. Why are they looking to be crazy? Scott, why are they looking to be crazy? It's the bow tie? That's self-service, isn't it? Here's the words. Just create the story on your own. You don't want to wait for me to do the story. You want to create the story on your own. So there's the words. Do it. All right, yeah, this isn't going anywhere. How about let's pretend this. Trevor, let's pretend this is zeros and ones. This is my EDW, and all your zeros and ones are right there. Yes, sir.
Maybe some sentences to choose from that are closer to a story.
We're going to get there. We're going to get there. Don't look at the title though. What if these were zeros and ones in your EDW? And I just hand you your zeros and ones in your EDW, and I say, hey, go get your enterprise's story from those zeros and ones. Does that make any more sense? Why doesn't that make sense? That's what the world's doing. It's got to make sense. The whole world is chasing self-service. That's what self-service is. Here's your zeros and ones. Go create your enterprise's story. It's got to be a good idea, or the world wouldn't be chasing it. Right? What's the flaw in that?
Meaning.
Pardon?
Meaning.
Meaning. Are you telling me there's not meaning in zeros and ones? Stop. I have not seen any articles come off from Gartner saying, dude, your zeros and ones are meaningless. Everybody's answer is they're the most valuable thing on the face of the earth. And then you start with self-service and you're left high and dry because they have no meaning on their own. What do we got to do to add value to zeros and ones to give them meaning? Put them in context. We've got to have business rules, right? So that's the business rules are where we get the context. Got to have data quality, obviously. Got to have data fidelity, but we got to have evidence for that data, right? Those words are just words until I tell you what was going on in my head. and I lay them out for you. Make sense? But it's the same thing with zeros and ones. All right? Does that make sense to you? All right? So if you remember nothing else, even about the Insight Bot, it's just silly to think about self-service unless you add governance to it. Does that make sense, Mike? It took me a couple minutes, but we got it, right? You got it, right? Like,
At first.
I do.
2 minutes later.
I know you are. I'm telling you, you're a smart guy. I figured you would. All right. So we got to have some context to those things. The reason I'm bringing that up, once I add that business context and I have governance, I can have governed self-service. Because if I can put business roles and metadata with those zeros and ones, you can serve yourself that condition. Does that make sense? Now, let's pretend you're just an average end user. You're not like super old. Do you know your subject in your business line? Absolutely. Are you a coder? Are you SQL code? Dang it, so self-service is going to be good, but if I got your data governed and I got your business rules governed, would you know what questions you need to ask to get the answers that you need to sell your enterprise story? Fantastic. So you know the questions asked. Are you all about saying keys and network diagrams and bar charts and swivel and all kinds of crazy cool things that squirrels can create with like back row extensions? That's not your jam, right? Your concept is I know what I need in my business. I could ask the questions and get answers if I was working with a government platform. Make sense? Now, that would be tremendous. Would that change the game for businesses? Would that change the game if you had that government platform you can work from, ask questions, and get answers? All right. Because here, I'm going to show a model I've seen elsewhere, not your companies, just other places. Elsewhere. God bless you. I'm the same person as you in my company. I want an answer, and I got to go to IC and I say, please, give me an answer. And they say, we would love to. Let's put that in our prioritization queue, and sometime down the road, depending on how many of our FTEs you voted on, we're going to get you your answer. I'm like, well, thank you, Scott. I appreciate it. I've always been good to you guys. I've worked for your $1 million data center and your sand equipment. I gave up nurses. I gave up operating staff. I gave up accountants. You can hire more report writers to give me my answer. So I know it's only going to be 6 months before I get my answer. Man, that's amazing. Versus if you had a government platform and you could ask a question and get the answer, it would change your business. Is that a different process? That's an entirely different process, isn't it? Now, part of one of the things that Joe mentioned, well, in Qlik View, I can do this visual, Ron. It has this visual. Oh, boy. That changed your life, didn't it? Shake your head no. That visual didn't change your life, did it? What was the problem with that process? It took 6 months to a year. That's the problem. It doesn't have anything to do with a visual. Right? I like that visual. We can't go to TechSense because it doesn't have that visual. Get over yourself. That visual never had anything to do with the process. That's the problem. Right? Now, let's say we love the visuals in Qlik View. We've got all of them over here. This team right here has built some amazing stuff in Qlik View. This is crazy. Crazy. What if I just took that same data? I didn't even rebuild the apps. Take that same data, but I had governance on top of it. Holy cow, I don't even add screens and visuals, and I let her just ask questions from that governed set of data. Does that make sense? As long as it doesn't take 6 months. Absolutely, right? So that's what Qlik Insight Bot is. All I got to do is take data, I add the governance around it, and I can let end users just ask questions of it. Is that a game changer? I kind of think that's a game changer for you, isn't it? If you can just say, yes, I can just ask questions, get answers, as long as it's governed, right? And that's what Qlik Sense adds. Right? It's not about, oh, here's a title bar caption thing that I type in. Right? It's none of that. It's the metadata and the definitions there so you know what you're looking at. Once I've got that governed platform, whew, now there goes my license. Right? That's what Qlik Insight Bot is. Our PowerPoint slides don't quite go to that same route, but they get you to that same area. So, let me go ahead and I'm going to kind of show you some of the ways that we would work with Qlik Insight Bot now. Right? So I've got a hub here. I've got some apps out here. Woo-hoo, I've got apps out here. Traditionally, what would I do to get my answers? Okay, there's an app out there. So what do I got to do, Scott? I got to click on one of the apps. Which one?
The right one.
The right one. There's a reason you are so successful in what you do. Yeah. And first, I mean, it kind of seems silly the way I present this, right, Trevor? As an end user, I kind of got to know what stream and what app. Right? We make it so simple. Oh, let me teach you how to do this. Oh, there's one app. There's one screen. Now I'm an end user. It's 4:30. The boss just asked me a question to me, and I'm like, man, I just got to find the right stream and then the right app. I got to go ask questions. Right? Well, I happen to have those out here. There's two ways that you can interface with Insight Bot within Sense itself. One is it could just be right out here in the hub. So I could just bring this up. If I click on this. Hey, and even knows who I am. That's amazing. Now I wish I could say, like, hey, Dalton was great today. There's a long time, but I don't have the camera. All right. I could say, hey, show me what apps I even have to do business with. Okay. I can tell it to narrow an app down. Hey, here's the KPIs you've got to deal with. Wow, that seems like a really high readmission rate. But I can't live with that, Joe. Right? Well, show me that readmission rate by hospital. Did I just hear a wow? Did somebody from Qlik write that quote down? Oh, wait, it's streaming live. Did you hear the wow? All right, very good. Hey, one of the things that comes up, hey, I can show you this information. This chart was not pre-built. This thing is built on the fly, just using an API. So it takes the data, just creates a chart on the fly. I can expand that chart if I want to expand that chart. I've got my little, I can close it back out of there. Here, it can give me more information. I can also say, enable insights. Hey, I'd like some advanced insights. And I say, show me readmission rate for General Hospital. Would also be interested in some other things. Yes, I'd like to see it year over year. Based on my data literacy, I may need it to give me some more information. Right? Hey, here's some things that other people ask about. Show me admins. And if I've got the insights on, like in this case here, it can give me that narrative. Right? So technically, for those of you who are the techies, you're like, what's the technology here? It's AI, it's NLU, it's NLP, and it can even be NLG, where it's generating the narrative form. Makes sense? Pretty easy to work with. It can do comparisons if I want to compare hospitals to each other. I can compare things to each other. I can also say, alert me if the reading rate for general hospital exceeds 6.03%. Okay. Now, I add it. Do I want this to be recurring, or do I just want it the first time? Maybe in your organization, you need to know every day. In my organization, I'm going to walk around, I'm going to smack Ryan in the head, I'm going to say, that better never happen again. And I guarantee it's never going to happen. So I may just want it once, or I may want it recurring. Or I may say, hey, I need you to email Dalton about this. Right now, I'm going to email me, so I'm not bugging people. But you can email, so you can get collaboration for this stuff. Makes sense? Now, I started this thing. Some of the things I can do, I can ask for help. Because maybe you don't even know what you're doing. I can say, show me dimensions. What is it I've got that I can work with? Show measures. What is it I can work with? What are the things that I can get out of this thing, right? So it's super helpful. Easy to ask questions. I started and I picked an application. But I kind of let into it with, I don't know what application, Scott. Right? What if I said, show me sales by store? How many of you have worked on a population health app before? Or a readmissions app before? Yeah, Joe and Mike, there you go. Rusty, come on, buddy, you've done this, right? Do I have sales by store in those apps? You've never built sales by store in your readmission app? No. That's crazy. Right? Well, gosh, maybe that's what I need. Like right now, that's the question I have. Hey, I've got sales by store in 2 different apps. Which one do you want? Well, I want this app. Come on, anything. Come on. Come on. There we go. It was taking some time. I don't even have to tell it the app. If I've got a question, I can ask the question. Now, that's one way to do it. I could do it from the hub. Right? Close out of there. Stop moving. Maybe I'm in my application, and I'm working on my dashboard, and the phone rings, and somebody asks me a question. Do I know which of my tabs that might be in? Just say no. I don't. Well, gee, I can use this as an extension, and I can say, show me readmits by month. Right, so I can just use it as an extension, just like you would any other extension if I was inside an app. Anybody super impressed yet? Yeah? I don't know why, man. You guys are too easy to please, man. Better than a bar of car punch, gosh.
Does it work with Alexa?
Say that again?
Does it work with Alexa?
I like the way you think. Why would you ask me a question like that? Clearly, this is all about you got to tell people to go out to the hub. Right? Because everybody's like, yes, I can't wait to go to the hub and learn something completely new, right? Like, why would I possibly want to use the collaboration or the tools that I'm already using to ask other questions? Right? So yes, it can work with Alexa, it can work for Skype for Business. I happen to use Slack. Right? So I've got all these other Slack channels, and I'm overwhelmed with Slack messages. Do you get overwhelmed with Slack messages too? Just ping, 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 because I got like 85 channels of 85 different things, right? I've even got an Insight Bot Slack channel that I got to get pinged on all the time with questions. It's like, just go away, turn on, right? So maybe I just want to be in here and I want to say, show me mid-rate by partner. Okay. And so even within collaboration tools that you're already using, other messaging clients, this can be embedded. How do you think this can get embedded, Sparrows?
APIs.
Get out of here, dude! That was a really good guess. I just randomly selected somebody and they guessed API. It's not like he's like one of the API kings in the world. So this has an API just like every other thing about sales. Right now, let me ask you a question. How many of you are thinking, gosh, I don't want to use that because the visual isn't just like it is in view? No hand. For the record, for the camera, nobody's hand went up. Right? So if you are a view user now, you're thinking, geez, I want to transition to Sense, right? But I'm not really sure why I would recreate apps. You wouldn't necessarily recreate the same apps. What you can do is you can add the governance and the metadata behind the form. Like you knew why you build a chart, you've got the definition. You can provide those things in what we call master items. I'm going to show you a little bit more on those in a second, and dimensions. And then you can just sit the Insight Bot on top of it for those people who are just constantly calling. She seems like a little pain, Claudia. She's probably calling her, add this, give me this. I want to know that, right? And it's just constant change requests. You're like, I wish you could just get her own answers. She can. Give her the chance. All right, makes sense? Now, how many of you like to see a little bit more technical about this?
Yes.
Yeah, wow, there you go. All right, so there is an NLU server that's off in Linux. I'm not going to show you that. That would be way too deep for this particular conversation. If you want to understand that afterwards, please talk to me afterwards. We're going to talk about the front end part of this. I've got this AI engine over here somewhere, and I've got some apps I want to deploy onto that server. Make sense? All right? So I would bring in metadata from those apps. So if I click to do that, what it does is it turns around and brings back the dimensions and measures that were in that app. Does that make sense? And I'll show you these things in a second. So it would bring those back, and then I can choose what I'm going to deploy. I might say, hey, I do not want to let end users see the fiscal year in quarter. Or I do need to let them see that. So you may have a lot of dimensions. You're thinking, in analytics app, I may need to give them those things, but people asking questions, that's just going to get confusing. Right? Maybe I know the people that are asking questions are always using posting dates, so I don't need this date, that date, and 15 other dates out there. I can do the same thing for measures. I can have these different measures, and you'll notice that some of these tags here, format is money, format is number, format is money. I'm going to show you how I define those things. But I can add other things if I want to. So even if Joe is a knucklehead and didn't build this app the right way, and I may be an Insight Bot administrator and I can deploy, get this guy answers today, I can say, hey, format that guy as money, show this thing ties to that. One of the other things that we can do is map these things. So if I'm looking at the measure and Rusty says, hey, I want to see the average spend per order. Well, how would you like to slice and dice that? Well, I'd like to see it by fiscal year. I'd also like to see it by action date. I'd also like to see it by recipient. Right? And I can add the dimensions that I want to slice or dice for that end user. Right? It's not me as a developer. I've built out how that recipient is formed, how dates are formed, what these measures are, right? And then I would end up just basically, I would save this guy. Save. And what I would end up doing is I would end up coming down and then deploying that app out to that server. Does that make sense? I'm going to go ahead and bring up my hub here. And if I can find this in there, I'll just tell somebody to find it on the answers in this. me some associate law. Right? And as we already know, when I've got these master items, this is where I add my governance. I can create any text or description I want. Hey, I might need to tell you, this is really important to know. No, here's where the data came from, here's how we calculated, blah, blah, blah. You should use those descriptions to provide those novice end users that governance. That's where you put the governance. Makes sense? But it's also where I can put tags. And with Insight Bot, there's several tags that we tell you that you can use, and you simply create those tags so that when you deploy the app, it's going to say, hey, that's a calendar type thing. Right? Because not every one of my dimensions is going to just happen to magically have the word date. Does that make sense? Same exact thing for measures. Right? So here's where I tell them, hey, by the way, this is a money field. Hey, this is a numeric field. You should format when you give the output to the end user. You should do this. There's also one other thing that's a master visual. All right. With this master visual, I just create this one dummy little one dimension here. And all I do are drag or drop the KPIs for the master measures that I want to use. Those become, and I originally said, show me the population of that. It said, here's a list of KPIs, which one are you interested in, right? So there is one little step here that you do within the app. You create this one little master table so that every end user will know what are the KPIs that I can track. Does that make sense? Now, how many of you have heard about other bots before? You've seen this searching and querying for data before, right? Okay, a couple of you. How many of you just dreamed about it? All right, now let me ask you this. I won't bring up my word cloud again, but this should stick out in your head. What are the chances I get the right answer if I just ask questions and laws and examples? I got a warehouse. It's got all my zeros and ones. It doesn't have any meaning. I asked a question of it. Woo-hoo! What's the total of this? And it's going to give me an answer. Did it sum the right values, or did it exclude the ones that should have been excluded? What's it going to do? Well, it's going to sum everything. That's kind of what a sum function does. Right? Does that sound like a good plan? I'm just thinking, that doesn't sound like, dude, there's no meaning in my warehouse. I cannot sit searching and querying on top of data that's just random that I don't know the meaning of. Right? Let alone, how do I even join that stuff? Right? So the key thing isn't just, oh boy, I can do a bot, I can do it inside a Sense, I can have an extension, I can have it in Slack, I can have it in Alexa. It's that it's sitting on top of governed data that has the best state engine underneath it and the associated model. Does that make sense? All right. I know I've got a little bit of time. Any questions?
What happens if you ask it a question it doesn't know?
Why would you do that?
You don't know what you don't know.
If you ask a question it doesn't know, it actually, all the questions you ask it logs. You ask a question it knows, it logs. You ask a question it doesn't know, it says, gee, I wish I could help you, but I can't. And it begins learning from those things. One of the beauties from my perspective, if you see Joe and I's post, data literacy, data literacy, data literacy. You know one of the things that I like about data literacy? This. Because now, dude, this guy's asking questions we didn't build into the API.
We now know what we need to add into the app. I started that app with my Qlik thing, but I just let you ask questions. Now I know, hey, when I build out my Sense app, here's the things I need to put in it that I may not have even had in my Qlik version. Makes sense. So those things are logged. So it can't give you every answer to every question, but it will log it and let you know, hey, maybe rephrase at a different way. Yes, sir.
Can you, let's say I call my income profit and
Yep.
it calls you revenue, but the field is called money. Can you have revenue, profit, money, both the same?
Fantastic. You simply add those as synonyms as part of those tags. Great question. In my population health app, I've got several tags to show you how to do it. Synonyms in this app that I'm just working on building for my federal team. I didn't have any of those, but that's a great question because that's obviously the thing. Right, money, profit's good. That rustic guy, I don't trust him with his revenue.
My question is kind of similar to what he just asked, but in a different way. So,
It would be a synonym.
Huh? No, it's not. It's different.
It's similar, it's just a different one.
So what it is, so I worked with an organization before where different departments within the organization, they call the same thing, but they're using a different metric behind it.
Fantastic.
Right? So now when I'm going to ask, I'm going to take example of persistency in healthcare, right?
Yep.
The retention rate. So
Yep.
I worked with an organization where persistency was calculated differently from the accounting department,
Yep.
from the policy department. They were calculated differently. Not vastly different, but a little bit different.
I
So
love
now when I'm going to ask him, give me the persistency for this year,
Yep.
what I expect to get from here.
Fantastic. You must have read my blog. Did you read my blog? You didn't.
And I get,
Dude, we've been
but I will.
good friends the last couple weeks. Why wouldn't you be reading my blog just to see if I posted something new? That's one of the things I mentioned, because governance is good, right? Well, gosh, a lot of times when I say governance, it's not so good because you think it's me keeping you from something. In my blog, what I share is, hey, governance is really making things available so that people get a trusted answer. That's what I mean by governance. And here's the thing. What stopped governance in so many other organizations, and I'm sure you guys have been in these meetings, let's come to agreement on what we should call this. Well, I want it to be this. Well, I want it to be that. Well, I want it to be this. And none of them will agree because we're trying to come up with one master definition. Why can't I have 5?
Yes.
As long as I put the metadata in the description.
Right.
There. Now let's just put all 5 in there. And if you wanted for this definition, ask for it. And I'm going to be able to show you those details. So if you ever see one of my Sense demos like you have, the first thing I do, hover over that little eye icon that says, tell me how you did this. That's the way my department does it. Show me how you did it. No, that's the way that department does it. I don't want that. Okay, let's change that. Makes sense? So you can put 5 in there. You just got to give some type of unique name, but put the metadata in the description. By the way, Bob, you're in this team. This is the way you should be looking at it. But if I'm looking at the wrong one, I better know it's the wrong one before I run down the hall and snacks. Another question. Okay.
Can you control access to information contained within the same app for different users?
Different users? You don't want everybody to just have the same access? Like, it's just data, man.
Well, in the same app.
Free the data. Free the data. Like, he should have a different view of data than you? Like, he's not allowed to see your patients or your department or your sales department? What do you mean, honestly? I don't know that. Like, we should just all have data and only look at the stuff that's important. We're busy. Yes, so Insight Bot will honor all the section access and security rules that you set up in the app. Right, so if you've got an app and I'm supposed to see north, and he's supposed to see south, and she's allowed to see everything, she's the queen of the world, but she shouldn't see maybe PHI information or KEON, all that can be built into the apps. And Insight Bot will honor that well, just as what was the hub. Right, and same thing with mashups. So when you're building mashups, you don't ever have to worry about section access, right? You just say, I'm just gonna throw it on the screen because I know that engine's got me covered. Yes, sir.
Building on his question, so let's say I ask something he doesn't know.
Yep.
After the review, that's information that the Insight Bot would not be able to retrieve.
Okay.
Is there like a notification or something that, hey, I remember your question that I asked, and now I know the answer? That's-
I would say the administrator would cover that, because I've got those questions, so I know what I should start asking. Part of the learning models would learn some things, but let's say that you asked something that I did need to add, right? Like I need to add a KPI or a dimension for you, that I didn't because I didn't think about that. I would know who drove that. Like I know you asked the question and I can let you know, hey, you did add that. Right, and sometimes it's as simple as, hey, I want to slice this by that. Like, why would you ever want to slice this by that? It doesn't make sense. Well, my team, okay, so maybe it's just something simple like I have to associate these measures to these types of dimensions. Right? So, great question. The administrator can handle those kind of things, and they should. And I would be looking through those logs on a daily basis because I want to know who's asking questions. When I did a webinar on this stuff back in December, when I did a webinar, before I did it, I sent an email to people and say, hey, here's random data, like a word cloud, tell me what questions you would ask. And some were, tell me the number, tell me the sum, tell me the count. Others were, tell me how these things relate to that under these conditions on the 4 Tuesday and 1. Like, whoa, that's a different data literacy level. Right? So it was interesting just to see just the types of questions people ask. It's interesting just to see the types of questions people ask because that tells you where their data literacy level is. Right? Are they just asking basic things? Should I work with them? And on the subject of data literacy, you began to ask questions. I said, I want to ask questions. The reason I started with that word cloud is creative writing. I started that story with, I need to get to this. Who's the person? What are they doing? Who are they going to see? Why were they there? So I'm going to start, when I do data literacy, webinars and things with people, I'm going to go through a creative writing exercise to get them to be more creative in their questions. The problem is we're programming. What's the sum of? What's the count of? Why? Have you just been using dashboards all your life? Dude, you ask this question, then you ask that one, then you ask that one, then you ask that one, and in your head, you start looking at correlations. Why don't you just ask what the top ones are? Which ones are getting worse year over year? Instead of asking 50 individual KPI questions and trying to put it together in your head. Yes, sir.
So the bot is available in both the hub and the app itself, right?
The hub as an extension within the app or
Right.
within a chat client.
Right. So now, if I'm searching for a question when I'm in the hub, right, I'm not in an app right now.
Right.
So is it going to look for the answer in everything out there? Versus if I'm in the app and I'm going to ask a question, is it going to look for the answer within that?
Within the app, it
Right.
would assume that you wanted to be in that app. So I didn't
Okay.
have to pick a top help. But I can still ask questions of anything. So if I'm in one app, I don't have to leave that app
Right.
to go out to something else and ask other
Right.
questions.
It's just ready to answer. If I get a call, I'm in the app,
If-
and I need to answer my boss, then I stay there and just answer the question.
Man, I saw this wonderful presentation from somebody who will remain nameless.
Right.
He came from Madison, Wisconsin, let's just say randomly. And he talked about embedding data in a workflow.
Right.
You're 15 times more likely to take action if it's just in your workflow than you are if you leave it. We want to honor that same concept even within this. Right? That's why you can ask questions across apps. Why would I want to leave the app and you're focused on I got selections in it, and then jump over here to have to ask another question and then come back? If you want you to get the answers where you're working. Yes, sir.
When would you
Today.
use a dashboard to provide a user or provide them with the insight bot?
Fantastic. If you've already got the answers, like an executive scorecard, then you build a tremendous mashup, let them use the scorecard. If they're already getting their answers, Here's where I would let them start thinking about this. We're in view, we want to move to sense. The first thing we have to do is to create that governance anyway, right? That's the big step. I'm in view, developers are awesome. Got the best developer in that guy looks like the best guy in the whole wide world. He's on my staff. Woohoo! We just like 18 years behind and ask for him to do. Versus, gee, I like governance and I like to start scaling out my development and updated democratization. Right, so that's the big step. If they're fine getting answers out of a dashboard and a scorecard, let them. Right, it's this pesky girl over here that keeps calling in change requests. And then you start saying, geez, she's a good candidate to be incensed to begin with, for one. Let alone, gosh, have I showed you the Insight Bot yet? Right, like just start asking the questions, because you're too smart for my developers, they can't keep up with you. That guy takes lunch breaks every now and then. I know he does work 20 hours a day, but he does take a lunch break. You missed your answer because you were in a meeting.
So is the difference then that you see dashboards as being more for explanatory purposes, but maybe thinking we should be leaving behind dashboards for exploration, pushing people to this sort of form?
All right, yeah, okay, I see where you're going, yeah. We still need the apps. I think you're still going to want apps to dive into, because you are going to want to, create or present storyboards for the day. You're going to want to drive through things that people are more comfortable that way. So that's why within the app it creates this silly chart, but then it also says, this came from this app. You can click the app and jump into more exploration. Right?
And I've seen it as a little converse of that too, that you built these wonderful applications, they have every visual you can imagine, and people still don't use it. Even though it's all there, it's very clear what you're supposed to do in your head, they just don't go there. So give them a different interface into it, let them ask questions, be comfortable, and then they might jump into that.
Gotcha.
We have customers build.
So that's Spark, yeah. So one of the
Spend 6
things.
months on that,
Yep.
and nobody uses it.
So one of the presentations I do is the reporting cycle of doom. I need to call this guy and ask for a question because I'm afraid I'm going to get my boss wrong answer. I don't want to filter things because I'm afraid I get in trouble. I'm okay asking him because then if the answer's wrong, I just say the report was wrong. He doesn't mind me pointing the finger and wagging him because he tells his boss that I gave him bad requirements. Right? Like you're laughing, that's the world, isn't it? We are in that cycle of doom now. So for people who are afraid, I don't want to interact because questions are an easy way to go. Right? I'm asking a question. I can say I asked the bot the question. Here was the answer it gave me. I'll throw the AI in plus.
Last question.
Right.
Ross. Let's say I go down this trail of questions till I find this insight. I'm like, oh, here's the answer I got. 5 or 6 questions that probably built a path. How do I then take that away? Like now I gotta go to lunch and tell him, like, look what I found here. I need to tell the story of how I got there so that he understands.
Gotcha. So you could just email that chart and say, look, here's the problem. But obviously you would need to add more commentary to it, right? And that's why with apps, as you drive through those things in apps, I can now create a storyboard that I can present in the meeting and get the data. So part of the Insight Bot is for those people who are afraid to click and poke, but for people who are clickers and pokers or who do need, I kind of made fun of visuals, but if you read my blog, I'm also a big believer in visuals because there's visuals that can tell a story that a single KPI or a single bar chart or line chart can't. Right? Woohoo! I asked the question, I got a line chart. I don't care. Right? I needed something like a sand key so I could see flow. I needed to see 99% of these come to the bad category and a couple come to the good category. And I want to track that flow. And I need to see a scatter plot, see relationships. I need to see a tree map. And I can see big chunks, and then I see a giant red one down here, but it's smaller than the rest, but it's bright red because it's horrible, and I want the user to be engaged. Right? So there are stories inside of visuals and like beehive diagrams and all these things that They can tell a story that a single line chart or bar chart can't. For people who are analytically inclined, but that as we're pushing those kind of visuals, like, look at this cool visual I did. Man, this guy's data literacy is horrible. He can't understand it. He needs a pie chart, man, with like three things. Simplify it for him. You're like, but there's a whole story. Your enterprise's problem is right there in that chart. Learn how to understand the chart, right? So we're at a big disparity of who can use those visuals, who can't. As we drive and look, if you can understand a tree map and scatter plot and sand key, you're going to have a really good career, right? But if you can't, you still need to access data, right? But you need to access government data. If I haven't made that really, really clear, right? Because just zeros and ones, that's just stupid. All right, I think I'm going to turn the table over to you, Mike. You got a cool word chart to show them right there?
No, but for the people, for all the people who voted for the your PowerPoint presentation, I have some good news.
Nice.